courage, commitment, desire. This is the Blitz, baby!
I'm Travis Downey.
And I'm Will Parchman.
And this is the Northwest Florida Daily News' Prep Football Blitz. And this week, just like we did last time, we saw you, instead of looking back, we're going to look at the top 10 stories entering the 2009 season, which will get underway next week. And we're going to start with Rocky Bayou Christian. It's their second year of football. John Reeves is obviously his second year there. And a little bit different this time around because now that school, instead of being an independent, is in the 1B ranks. So a little bit stiffer level competition.
Right. You know, they had more freedom last year in terms of what they scheduled. This year they've got a little bit more of a set schedule. You know, they face stiff competition. They're going to have to get into that district mindset, you know, that mid-season, you know, week to week, tough opponent after tough opponent. And they do, you know, finish off the year against a Freeport team on their homecoming that returns 16 starters. Right. So nothing gets easier from here on out for Rocky Bayou.
Then we're going to go to 1A, South Walton. Really intriguing storyline with the Seahawks.
Absolutely. The Seahawks coming off that historic 9-3 campaign, you know, won their first playoff game in school history. The question this year for David Barron is without a doubt going to be, can they keep that success sustained? They return, you know, the quarterback, one of our Dandy Dozen selections at running back in Brian Adams. The question will, you know, obviously be, you know, how will they deal with that kind of the district title coming back? Can they repeat? You know, they got that tough 1A, that 9-team district. So I think, you know, as moving forward, David Barrett doesn't want to talk a whole lot about, you know, the success they had last year, but he's definitely looking, you know, you got to be pretty positive in South Walton.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with having the X on their chest this year, being the hunted rather than the hunter. So keeping with that theme of the 1A football, going to move to Freeport, and it's kind of a similar deal there. Cold weeks and the Bulldogs there, a lot of expectations off a 5-4 year. How do they bounce back, or how do they follow up last year's strong showing?
Right. Well, the thing about Freeport this year is, you know, they've not dealt with expectations a whole lot. I mean, they had that 8-2 season a few years back, but other than that, you know, they haven't had a whole lot of sustained success. So this year it'll be interesting to see how Jim Anderson's group will be dealing with that. You know, they got the real solid returning quarterback in Cole Weeks. They got Nathan Hendrickson, who's just a blur at running back. I mean, the guy's just going to be blazing all year. So I think the question, you know, with Freeport, it's similar with South Walton. You know, they won 5 games last year. Jim Anderson's got to be confident that can increase this year. So.
Yeah. With 1A again, sticking in those ranks, go to Baker. Cameron Domain, no longer there. Big part of that offense, big part of that football team and in that school. He's gone. How do they go about replacing him? Can they replace him, I guess, is the better question.
Right, and I think Bob Kellogg's been explicit that they, you know, not a guy you can really replace, especially not in one off season. You know, he's talked a lot about finding that speed guy, that 4-5 range speed guy where they can really kind of bust a hole in a defense and, you know, really make some problems for him. But, you know, he hasn't really found that guy yet. They're still looking. You know, the season obviously hasn't started yet, and that's where, you know, a lot of guys will prove their mettle. But, you know, he is a little wary entering the season. They did lose 16 starters, so whenever you're doing that, I mean, obviously you're going to have some trouble replacing. So
attrition is a key word when we're looking ahead to this 2009 season. Losses from graduation. That takes us to Walton in the 2B ranks. They're looking to replace a pair of pillars of their own in Isaac Jackson and quarterback Terrell Bramlett. You've been to Walton a few times. How does Lenny Jankowski like to make up this year's roster? You
know, he's real positive. You know, as positive, I guess you can be replacing the, you know, guys that had that kind of production. But you know, they're going to start Liam Miller at quarterback, guy that backed up Terrell Bramlett last year. He's had a real strong summer. They feel real good with him. I can tell you, I saw him personally in the spring game. Very positive output. You know, he did kind of the minor things, but he did what was asked of him, and he'll do that in that spread offense. The same goes for Trey Williams replacing Isaac Jackson there at running back. So they feel positive. They got some pieces coming back. They got that terrific defensive line. So very, you know, guarded expectations, but they have some.
You mentioned positive feelings. There are some positive feelings at Choctawhatchee too.
Absolutely. Greg
Thomas coming off of last year. No one expected much. Nearly take away a District 2 4A crown. This year they've slid down to 3A. So it doesn't get any easier for these guys. What do you think about Choctaw's chances in 3A football this year for them?
Right. Well, I think it begins and ends with kind of that backfield that they have there. with Charlie Lott and Freddie Gray. I mean, they're just going to pound people this year. And, you know, that defense, I think Greg Thomas is still kind of figuring some of that stuff out. He's going to, you know, wait and see a little bit. But, you know, in general, Choctaw, I mean, they went 5-4 last year. I mean, I haven't seen anybody that's not been, you know, optimistic this year.
And that'll take us to 4A with Navarre, Chad Lashley, his second year there with the Raiders. Team that only won 3 games last year.
Disappointing year, absolutely. Disappointing
year, but now they hopefully they've reloaded. They've got some key pieces back. Andrew Lasquez is back, quarterback. Michael Pettis, Danny Dustin type of player, he's back. So there's hope that with, you know, a move in districts that maybe they can get some more wins. It's not going to be easy though.
No, and that district, you know, it's a killer. You know, they play all those Pensacola area teams, you know, with Pace and Milton and all those guys, and you know, that's a murderer's row in terms of teams. So let's talk a little bit about Crestview. Obviously, a team with you know, maybe playing that dark horse role this year.
Yeah, it's a new 2-4A. Crestview is still there. Niceville comes to the picture. Not a lot's being expected of Crestview. You know, we're looking for Walton Beach and Niceville. Those are the obvious 2 favorites. But I really think with Crestview and talking with Matt Brunson, seeing that team practice some, it's a team that's going to live and die with the run game and a smash mouth approach that Matt Brunson so employs every year. So I think Crestview really has a potential. Granted, the schedule doesn't always work out in their favor. They're on the road for some of their big district games. I think they have you know, they could be the spoiler in that new district.
And then speaking of that district, in that 2-4A district, let's move on to Fort Walton Beach, obviously, with the fantastic quarterback. I mean, it's got to begin and end with Luke Barnes.
Yeah, it really does. Luke Barnes, you know, he's on the cusp of breaking Danny Werfel's school records for touchdowns and yards thrown in his career. So he's obviously the cream of the crop there at quarterback. How he goes and how really that makeshift defense, not a makeshift defense, but a reloaded defense, how they perform this season is going to be key. And how they're looking for a 3rd straight District 2-4A title, something the school hasn't done before. So a lot's on Barnes' shoulders, but a lot's on that new defense's shoulders as well.
And their biggest roadblock this year has got to be Niceville. You know, the team that basically is just loaded every year.
Yeah, Niceville, you know, Rivals came out with their rankings for top 100 high schools in the nation. Niceville's number 69. You know, Roy Finch, Cody Williams, a defense that's got a new leader in Jim Norrell. It's going to be interesting to see how all these pieces come together, but a lot of people are thinking that Niceville, having slid down from 5A to 4A, has a legitimate shot at a state title this year.
Sure.
All right, guys. Well, that'll do it for the Prep Football Blitz.
For Will Parchman.
I'm Travis Downey. We'll see you next week.